Welcome to the What If podcast with your hosts, Spencer Worth Davis and Ryan Copperrood.
Who cares?
What's up?
How are you today?
I'm doing great, dude.
Fantastic. We have a guest in the room. A recurring guest.
What's up, gang?
Serial guest.
Serial guest. All right.
Yeah.
Who leads in guest appearances?
You're gonna be.
You might be tied. I think you're tied with Mason after this
you're probably
episode.
tied with
shit.
Mason. So when you do take your sabbatical from life, maybe you'll have to do it here so you can be on a grip.
We can do the first Skype episode.
Ooh. Where are you gonna be? Do you know?
No, I don't know yet.
Max is taking a sabbatical from his life soon. We're all envious.
You're gonna kill yourself?
That's kind of what it sounded like.
Yeah, don't do that. A sabbatical from life sounds really bad.
I guess maybe that was poorly phrased. Max, welcome. What are we talking about today?
Let's talk about genomics.
Genomics. We're going to ask the question today on the What If podcast. What if Google knew your DNA?
Ominous.
Ominous.
Very
terrifying.
ominous.
Have you seen Total Recall yet?
Look, maybe. So what if I haven't? Huh? How about that? I thought you were. I was actually excited for you to bring up a new movie I haven't seen.
Oh, I'm sure we'll come across
You
a
ever watch
couple.
GATTACA?
I have seen GATTACA.
Okay.
I have seen GATTACA. It's been many years. I'm sure we'll get into it.
GATTACA becomes more interesting when you know more about this topic.
Which
and when you're not like hormonal and 14 in biology class.
Right. I think the last time anyone has watched GATTACA, they were a freshman in high school. You're not allowed to watch it after the age of 16.
Yeah.
It's like The Giver of
Max,
movies.
the Giver of movies. Do you ever wonder, like, was The Giver actually a good book, or did it just somehow become this infectious trope of everyone's seventh grade? That
I think after we graduated from high school, they just burned all those copies. I don't think you can even read it anymore. All right. So what if Google knew your DNA?
What if Google knew your DNA?
Okay, so let's just lay down what a genome is, or what genomics is, I guess, for starters. Like the definition of genomics is a branch of molecular biology concerned with the structure, function, evolution, and mapping of genomes.
Okay. And a genome is?
Like one's, again, I think a genome is one's complete DNA.
So the complete sequence of your DNA, and
Exactly.
is that unique to each individual?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's your thumbprint, like, of the proteins that build who you are.
So your genetic thumbprint, if you will.
Exactly.
But similar in the way that if I put my thumbprint down next to either of your thumbprints, our thumbprints would look very similar, but they're
in fact unique.
in fact, very unique.
Cool.
Don't we share like 90 between us as individuals? It's upwards of 99% of our DNA or whatever is overlapping, and there's slight things that make my hair
I would guess it's
blonde and
much higher than that even.
word. Max looks like he's looking for it.
No,
He's like, I had this in my notes somewhere.
had this in my notes.
Don't we share like 95 or more % with other species?
Yeah, absolutely.
Humans and chimps are in the 90s for sure.
Yeah.
So I would guess humans and humans have got to be well above that.
I think we're
To
even
still
in the
be
90s
humans.
with some
Starfish?
other. Is it starfish? Oh, I was gonna say rats or something.
Us and an orange blob are actually 99.4% the same thing.
I do know that some mammals that we would not expect to have that much overlapping with, we actually have a significant amount of.
I spent all my time researching
overlaps.
how aliens visited Atlantis and created human beings through genetic manipulation. So,
Oh, we'll get there.
yeah.
Oh, we'll get there.
I can't chime in too much on any facts. I'm just going to make shit up about aliens.
Perfect.
Yeah.
What do you got, bro? You look like
Okay.
you were hunting for something.
Nah, not really. I was
right.
just confirming a couple things to be like, oh shit, wait. So, yeah, I don't even really know where to start. I guess we'll start with the Human Genome Project, which was like an endeavor, I believe, and that began in like the 90s to map one person's genetic sequence, to map one person's DNA.
Do we know who that person was?
That who
Who had their DNA sequenced?
I didn't know.
know, man. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not.
Max is stressing
I'm not
so hard about
prepared.
this.
Max, you don't need to stress. Don't worry. Bro, I think there was a tortilla chip in my tequila soda. and
Dope.
I did not eat
Why?
a tortilla chip today, and I don't know where that came from.
Was it in the bottle tequila?
That's a strong drink choice.
Was it in the bottle of tequila, in the glass, or some
Oh,
combination?
that's not a mason jar. That's just where I store my tortilla chips.
Okay, if I had poured a bunch of tequila over a bunch of tortilla chips,
You
I
thought
would
they were
know.
ice cubes, but they were just tortilla chips.
I would know, man.
How much tequila have you had already?
I'm wrong
dude?
about a lot of things, but I would know. All right, sorry, Max.
So I have no idea who.
I can look it up if you guys would like.
I think it's probably.
Googly moogly.
Really.
I think it's probably confidential.
I would imagine
mean-
they wouldn't have put that person on Mega
On blast, yeah.
But I do think it would be pretty interesting to be the patron saint of
Yep.
human DNA.
So-
well, yeah, explain to us what it was, I guess.
So yeah, and this first, I mean, because do you have the DNA wiki page pulled up?
I was trying to see who got their DNA sequenced, but
Okay.
I'm not able to find it yet.
I mean, like a single person's DNA is like such an insane amount of data, and I actually don't even really understand how they sequenced this individual. But the first genome, it took 15 years to sequence and cost over $3 billion.
And that was the purpose of the entire Human Genome Project, right?
Correct.
Was to do that one sequence of one individual.
Correct. And the reason, actually, I think it's kind of a good time to talk about this is that now you can get sequenced in a much shorter amount of time, and it costs about $1,000, which was kind of always a goal they were going for.
It's actually an example that Ray Kurzweil uses when he talks about the singularity and the technological singularity. He uses the example of how long it took to sequence the human genome the first time,
Right.
relative to how easy and how cheap it's gotten now. And then that was in 20 years, basically.
Yeah. I always like the other one I like that I think is overlapping is from the Wright brothers' first flight to us landing on the moon
yeah.
was 60, whatever, 4 or 5 years.
03 to 69, right? Was the moon landing?
Yeah, so 65, 66
I feel like we've
years.
talked about that before.
Probably.
It
You and
all
I?
comes full circle. No, on the podcast. I guess we.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Or have we just had that
Maybe
conversation in real
it
life?
got edited
enough?
out. I haven't listened.
I don't actually listen to your guys' shit.
He's just
I don't listen to mine. I'm living it.
he's too busy trying to be the most popular guest of all time.
Yeah.
So what did we learn from doing that, from sequencing someone's DNA?
Okay, so like one person's DNA is not that helpful, but when you can start to compare many different sequences, you can start to like look at specific, differences or mutations in DNA that similar people share. So, for example, like if you look at people who have a high predisposition to diabetes, let's say, you'll find like a lot of similarities within their DNA in like specific places. And the way this has now started to accelerate a little bit is, so I don't know who they are. I think it's a company called Decode in Iceland.
Okay.
And they sequenced all of Iceland's DNA.
Wait, what? The entire population of Iceland has been
how big do you
sequenced?
think Iceland is, by the way?
It's got to be in the millions, if not tens of millions of people, right?
It's 300,000
Yeah.
people.
Was I thinking of Greenland?
Nope.
Greenland?
Greenland's got to be
Definitely
less.
does not have 10 million people in it. I don't know
Population in
anything.
Greenland is probably like 7.
Yeah. Does that include polar bears or?
No, people population.
3 polar
The bear
bears.
population might be in the
I
millions.
thought like things on Greenland, 7.
Okay, so you said 300,000?
Yep. So, and the reason it was such a good, what is
the
Greenland?
population of Greenland is 56,000.
See? Told you we're not experts at anything. Proved it.
So yeah, Iceland's like the perfect place to do this with because it's like this like real homogenous society.
They're pretty isolated, right?
They're isolated. There's not a bunch of immigration or emigration from the island. So it's like this really, in terms of like what the Genome Project was trying to do, it's this like really pure gene pool they're working with. And so it's a lot easier to detect these anomalies
sure.
within their DNA and similarities.
I guess it would make sense that if you have a ton of people who are super similar, whatever is different is going to stick out a lot more than if you were to take a cross section of the American population. You have people from all over the country and all over the world.
Oh yeah, especially the American population that's like super diverse and like,
and huge.
Yeah.
And spread out also.
I'm sure we would have tons of overlapping inconsistencies in our DNA as a populace. Okay, cool. So they sequenced the entire. Was everyone obligated to do this, or was it, hey, if you want to, we're gonna sequence your DNA as a citizen of Iceland?
I don't know the exact details. I know it was definitely controversial, but I think everybody has their DNA sequenced who's in Iceland.
Cool.
So, and like when you do that, you start to get, so you know what diseases a person has or what traits they have, you know, from their eye color to you have all their medical records, though anonymous.
Yeah.
And then when you can start to compare everyone's DNA with conditions they have or traits they have, and you can start to pick out where these come from. So like people talk about it like basically putting together the toolbox of diseases, like simply being able to identify what parts of your DNA relate to parts of your character.
Interesting. So essentially, you look at a big enough group of people, you find all the inconsistencies, and then you see how those are reflected in human beings, and you can identify the exact locations in people's genomes and then in their DNA that correspond with those diseases or abnormalities or what have you. Right?
Yes. Exactly.
Am I tracking?
Yes.
Thus far? All right.
So what do they do with all of that data? Have they been able to make any big breakthroughs in terms of medicine or anything like that since, because they finished this project when? Somewhat recently?
The Human Genome Project got funding under Clinton and kicked off in 1990, I think.
Right, yeah. The Human Genome Project finished in 2003. I guess but was this project in Iceland, was that more recent?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
I should know that.
Yeah, I mean, I would, because the Human Genome Project was the first time that a full human genome had been sequenced.
A single one, yep.
So obviously this must have been...
It's definitely more recent.
Yeah.
And like, you know, just simply dealing with the data is, I think, like challenging. But that's also another like field that's catching up. Not only like sequencing a person, but like being able to understand the data problem.
Totally.
Right.
And to be able to store it. I mean, even just thinking about that element, like today, buying a terabyte of data on a hard drive for us costs 60, 70, 80 bucks. You know, to buy the first digital camera I ever had when I was in high school had 212 megabits of memory on the card, and it cost, you know, $450 or whatever.
Yeah. That's changing so quickly, though. I mean, that doubles every 6 months.
Right.
You know who's really good at storing huge amounts of data?
DNA?
Well, actually, that too.
I definitely know second behind human DNA.
What?
Google.
Right.
Huge amounts of data. Petabytes, right? Isn't that the biggest one we have?
That's a word?
Petabyte.
What does that mean? Cool.
It's just the biggest.
Good Google it.
It's just as far as I know, it's the biggest like currency of data that we have.
Whatever it is, 1,000 terabytes.
Okay.
Google's got a lot of petabytes.
I'm sure.
What I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I would imagine they do.
All right. So Iceland got sequenced. The Human Genome Project was the first one to do it.
Yeah, and so, I mean, the punchline of all this, or the punchline of this study is that a Dr. Eric Lander thinks in 5 to 6 years we'll basically have a complete catalog of human conditions. as in like we'll know where to look for specific traits, conditions, mental characteristics.
Not necessarily that we'd be able to do anything about them, but that we'd be able to identify where they are in our...
Yes.
Okay.
So we have the catalog to look at. We kind of understand, how our DNA works.
We can
on
isolate
a more
each one of these
comprehensive
things at least.
level.
Okay.
And just to clarify, is that just because we just keep testing more and more and more people and keep pairing up those inconsistencies and finding the abnormalities and where they lie?
Yeah, I would assume both, that you're getting better at understanding the data and you're getting more samples.
Sure. Because of companies like 23andMe.
Yeah, I don't know the nuts and bolts behind like the corporate side of this, who shares what data with who, but...
Right. But I'm just saying, I see what you mean. You're saying whether or not 23andMe, when they sequence your data, is like, we will add this to an anonymous DNA bank that we have kind of thing.
They say no, they won't do that.
They do.
I'm
say
pretty
they
sure
won't?
23andMe is adamant about that.
But I'm sure somebody out there is sharing that information.
Yeah.
Whether they are or not, there's no way that everyone is keeping that private.
I wonder if you could opt into...
You can absolutely. Like sequencing companies are being, they'll say like, we need people with Parkinson's to come in and like...
And let us sequence them.
Yes.
Whoa. That makes total sense. I just had not had that thought until right now.
Yeah, even 300,000 people is like a pretty good chunk of the population.
Sure. Though, to your point, it's a good starting point for finding abnormalities among a very similar group of people, but I can't imagine that Iceland's 300,000 people from a universal scale from the whole world identifies a lot of other differences.
No, I'm just saying if we're able to do 300,000 without too much trouble,
Oh, right.
then we can't be that far off from
Doing however much we want.
it just being part of the census to have your DNA sequenced.
True that.
All right. Where
ahead.
does that fit in with like what CRISPR is doing?
What is a CRISPR?
What's CRISPR doing?
CRISPR stands for let me pull up my notes because it's a lot of words.
Is this going to be aliens again?
No, this is the most legit science I think I've ever presented on this show, actually. There are so many conspiracy theories that go along with this, but I'm not even going to get into them right now.
This is going to be your new intro for talking about aliens on the show. You're just going to be like, so how does that relate to what CRISPR is? And everyone's going to go, I have no idea what you're talking about. And you're going to, well.
I'm totally not about to talk about aliens.
All right, cool.
I absolutely will later on in the show. Right now, I'm
we wouldn't be mad.
absolutely not talking about aliens
All right, go
or
ahead.
conspiracy theories or cryptids or anything.
As you do talk about all
But
those
when
things.
are we sequencing Bigfoot's DNA? CRISPR stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats. CRISPR.
No wonder you had to read that.
Yeah, it's a lot of words. It is a naturally occurring defense system that was first found in bacteria. I'm not going to really pretend to know how it works, but it's using CRISPR, it's theoretically possible to modify your genome. So to to identify a specific part of your genome and go in and remove it. So if we were to locate where Parkinson's is in the human genome, we could go in and just edit that gene that's responsible for Parkinson's or remove that gene altogether.
So this is being done already, right? I mean, is CRISPR...
Not on humans.
Well, you mean alive right now, we could go into Spencer's genome.
We could see
and
that
knock out your Parkinson's as you're alive.
Right.
But this is happening in early stages of human life. Right?
I guess I'm not aware of that. Maybe.
So this is one of the articles I found as we researched deeply into this scientific topic from early 2015. And there were a couple of scientists and a gang of helpers at Guangzhou the university in Guangzhou, China.
China does all the crazy shit with total disregard for ethics.
Yeah,
I love
man.
it. They have all the money and none of the ethics, and they just do whatever the fuck they want.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
They performed experiments on 86 human embryos. This is from a CBS News article called Designer Baby Controversy. Scientists edit genome of human embryo. And basically what they did was they threw out, whatever we know, were able to identify this specific gene called HBB, which causes a fatal blood disorder known as beta thalassemia. And they literally cut out the bad piece of gene in the embryos that showed it and replaced it with a good one to eliminate that disorder in the embryos before they came to life. And there was, as far as I was able to find, this was the first instance of this being actually executed like successfully on human beings, and sparked a lot of this could happen with Huntington's and cystic fibrosis and certain cancers. And
I think it would have a ton of applications with other animal species and with plant species too.
Yeah, I mean, not to hijack the conversation, but I feel like we should
necessary.
kind of save this, because this is like really getting into the interesting part. Kind of save this for a little bit later.
Okay.
Because like
we won't get into
does
Designer
blow
Babies
up
yet.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing. I mean, we can keep just like cruising through, but that's like when it starts to get super interesting and like
totally
super sci-fi.
All right, let's keep making sure we got all the groundwork out.
So, okay, so like just like why are people doing this, or like what benefits could we see from this?
Just sequencing DNA.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean,
like right now you can find out a bunch about your heritage, what's the word I'm looking for? Your like ancestry, or like, you know,
Ancestry.com, right?
Right. Ancestry.com. Are they sponsoring this episode?
No, but I'm just saying.
What's Ancestry.com?
You're just saying your ancestry, right? Like you're looking for the people who came before you and what you know about them?
Yeah, you pay them $200 and they'll tell you what continent you're from and who your people are and all that stuff.
And your racial
percent
makeup
of your blood. Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So we can do that already, like super accurately, which is like interesting, I guess, somehow. I think the money driving the whole research forward is pharmaceuticals, obviously.
Do we know that? I mean, do we have evidence of that?
I mean, that is like the most. I'm sure there is evidence of it.
Sure. Pharmaceuticals in what sense? Like what would be the benefits?
Or like the health industry is driving this research forward.
Sure.
Why?
Chemo now, I guess, would be a good example, is like, that's like our best way of like fighting cancer as a disease, which is like essentially like a cellular poison, I guess you could say. And you're just hoping you kill more of the bad cells before you kill the good cells.
Yeah.
Right.
Where I think the hope is that once we have this catalog at our disposal, you will be able to like use medicine to go into the DNA and affect the certain building blocks of you, like certain proteins or the certain part of your DNA.
To me, that feels like counterintuitive to the model that pharmaceutical companies tend to follow. Like if you can go in and alter my DNA in a way that I just don't get cancer, how does a pharmaceutical company benefit from that? They benefit from me being sick for as long as possible.
But don't you think too, though, that they're probably having the conversation of like, this is going to happen? It seems like starting in 1990, people probably knew it was imminent. And by the time they actually successfully did it in 2003, they were like, oh shit, it's upon us. And now I can put $400 in a check and send it out, and with my hair in it, and it comes back to me. I mean, I feel like
so many steps removed from curing cancer, though.
I feel you. I guess all I'm trying to say is that from probably a ways out, they've been looking towards it, knowing that in some ways this is an imminent scientific possibility, and they probably want to be the ones who can do it and not be the ones who can't do it, because then if you have two choices, I can either give you sustained rounds of chemo for 2 years, or as as an 18-year-old, we can go in and get rid of all that shit for you for a very significant,
I pay like
sure price.
10 times the amount to take a pill and have my cancer be gone than...
Yeah. If I could give you $200,000 as an 18-year-old and know that there's no chance of me getting some natural form of cancer in my lifetime, that'd probably be something that those companies want to get in on that income stream.
Corner and try and monopolize that.
Right. Especially since they're already pouring so much money into that research and stuff. They're probably like, well, we better try to have a lead on that if possible.
Yeah, it just seems like there's so much time and money ingrained into the old way of doing things.
For sure.
That would be, if that change happened, it's not going to happen quickly.
Yeah, definitely not. And it's definitely in opposition, like you said, to, I think, the existing model. It's not, it's the opposite of treatment. It's prevention. It's,
like you look
it's
at
the
the
most specific prevention we could possibly imagine as a species is seeing that it could happen to you and killing it before it does.
Like using the auto industry as an analogy, we've had better technology for decades. And no one's acted on it because there's so much money to be made by not.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy. Definitely.
Just because the tech is there, to me, doesn't necessarily mean that we would actually be able to access it.
And I don't know that like necessarily like Pfizer is funding this research, but I think like at least with the intention of this is the real world monetary application for what we're looking at.
And
it's what's driving
I definitely
it.
get that.
Right.
But yeah, I'm sure it's very political and there's lots of asshole lobbyists involved in this entire thing.
Trying to steer
Well,
that.
and that would all accelerate the day that somebody proves they can actually do any of these things. Because right now it's purely hypothetical still.
Well, except for the babies that don't have that blood disease in China.
Yeah, I also just don't necessarily trust news like that comes out of China.
Sure.
But
I
yes.
mean, I guess, they did it to embryos in 2015. So there's also the whole, we can't speak to whether or not those babies are going to get that blood disease because they're embryos right now, which is also an interesting element of this, that we might not know how well some of these sort of things work or don't work.
I was just saying, I don't totally trust the look at these cool things we can do news stories coming out of China as being like factual.
Sick China bird, bro.
Well,
I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you.
Do you have any listeners in China?
not yet.
Yeah, you don't really have free internet in China.
I was
so
going
you
to say,
can't really get there.
could they even get to us if they
I don't
wanted?
think so. So fuck them.
No, you need a, what do you call it? VPN.
VPN, Tor.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was in China for like 48 hours and I like couldn't access any of my shit. I was like, this is an outrage.
Yeah.
Can't listen to my podcast.
You couldn't even hit up Twitter or like...
No, definitely not. No Snapchat, no Gmail.
How do they do that with the app? Like, how does the app not work?
I'm also not qualified to
still
speak
hitting
on this.
servers.
Yeah, I mean, the app like opens and then
So-
it just doesn't do anything.
Man, China. Not nice.
But they do have this thing called WeChat, which is like every app we have put into like one
I bet
chat.
it's super lit.
It's like your Facebook and Tinder and Snapchat and Yelp and like every time I was like, well, why can't you like use this app? And they're like, well, no, WeChat does it. I'm like, shit.
That's a good app. Nice
That's
job.
not really the point. But
leaving Yelp reviews for your Tinder dates on Facebook.
Whoa. That's like 4 levels of Inception.
Okay, so we're gonna get fucked by pharmaceutical companies in a different form down the road.
probably. Hopefully we get more fucked with better results though.
All right.
I think that's
always
promising.
the goal.
Honestly,
It's been my goal for years.
in my mind, I was like, that's a bummer. And then I was like, well, it is better though. I mean, demonstrably, if it works, it's better.
Yeah, man.
Why don't let's take a quick little break and we'll come back after break and dive a little deeper into designer babies and X-Men and Gattaca.
Aliens
And-
coming to talk to the Atlanteans and maybe manipulating their DNA to make human beings.
And just maybe some of that too. We'll be right back in a second with the What If Podcast.
We want to hear from you. Send us a message. Email hi, that's hi, at whatifpodcast.com. Or leave us a voicemail at 612-246-4614. And now, back to the What If podcast.
So Max and I were just talking while we were on pause about the money, right? Like the fact that people are investing a ton of money into this. So, you know, the Human Genome Project itself was a grip of public money. I mean,
Billions.
Billions of dollars over the course of 13 years in multiple different countries that put that original sequence into the public domain. And now there's these health companies and medical companies who are investing tons and tons and tons of money into, you know, what they can learn and what they can do with this information. And I guess what we were talking about is where the value is now, which I think is kind of an interesting part of this, because I don't know, like take 23andMe, for example. And like, if y'all want to advertise on here, I will completely change my opinion at any given point. But I don't know why giving 23andMe, how much is it? Is it still like a G-bar to do it?
You can do one for, no. You can do one for $79 or one for $200.
And one gives you more or less information, essentially?
Exactly.
Okay. So if I throw $300 at 23andMe and I know a bunch of stuff about my...
It's 79 or 179 now.
Okay, wow. That is not billions of dollars at all.
The 79 is just your ancestry.
Really?
Get a breakdown of your global ancestry by percentages, connect with DNA, relatives, and more. The 179 is health and ancestry. Get an even more comprehensive understanding of your genetics. Receive 65 plus online reports on your ancestry, traits, and health. So that might get into your propensity for certain health issues or whatever.
Okay, but so here's my question is, you know, I guess, I don't know, if you have a genetic predisposition to lupus, let's say, or I don't know, I think the example I used when we were off air was leukemia. You know, what does that do for you as a person? Or Parkinson's. What does that do for you as a person? Like, what did you buy with your $200, $170? What did you buy to know that you have a genetic predisposition to Parkinson's?
Well, I guess it would depend on the disease, because maybe there are certain things that you could, through diet, exercise, various lifestyle things, maybe you could prevent or lessen your chances of
diabetes.
Yeah,
cancers.
It's funny you say it like that, because I haven't had my credit card out, but I've definitely thought about paying for 23andMe because I'm just fascinated by this topic.
Definitely.
And yeah, I mean, so there is some. What am I trying to say? Is this not interesting at all to you guys? Would it not
absolutely
be?
Is.
Because you're saying, Spencer, a lot of this stuff is environmental too. And if I, know I have a high predisposition to heart disease, that doesn't mean I'm getting heart disease, but it does mean I can make better decisions in life.
And I think, well, Ryan, to what you're asking, it's just having an interest or a fascination or a curiosity isn't enough to really warrant growth in this field. No one's going to be dumping billions of dollars into this just to find out where their relatives are from or if they're 20% more likely to get heart disease.
Sure.
I think a lot
they
of
kind of are now, though, aren't they? I mean, with 23andMe, there's a lot of.
I
people
guess I
that
don't know
just,
how much money is actually changing hands.
Sure. I mean, I know where it's headed.
Right. I think it's down the road when you can then actually do something about this from whether it's through something like CRISPR where I can go in and edit or just remove those genes.
Yeah.
Then that information is hugely valuable. And
definitely.
For in a big data sense, I think that's where you're really going to get the most value out of this is
right.
Having this catalog, these stores of information where we know every genetic defect that there could be, and where it's likely to occur, and in whom it's likely to occur, and what to do when it occurs.
Patterns over time.
Yeah, I think the big data aspect is really where this is heading.
I completely feel you, and I feel you on both accounts, that both the big data aspect and the actionable information aspects are both totally valuable things. And maybe to your point, Max, this speaks to my personality as well. But when you say you could have heart disease or you could not, but you could go, you know what, I'm gonna run that 4th day a week instead of only 2 or whatever, just to make sure that I try to beat that back. But in my mind, I feel like I'm also potentially paying for a piece of knowledge that I have absolutely no physical impact over, and then that's just a dark cloud that sits over me as a human being, as a 29-year-old dude. Like, I got a lot of life ahead of me, and if I'm going like, okay, cool, so I have like a 70% chance I'm gonna get Parkinson's one day. All right, that's terrifying.
For sure.
Makes a lot of shit suck between now and then in my brain, I think.
It's not fun and games necessarily, or even one that 23andMe tells you is like if you could be like what your likelihood of balding is. Even that would be like a total mind fuck, Be like, God, what the fuck is going on here? Like, so it's not.
Dude, side note on that, I remember I had a bio teacher in middle school who his whole thing was he had everybody in the class raise their hand and go, okay, if your mom's dad, okay, so your grandpa on your mom's side is bald, raise your hand. And now all the kids in class were like thinking for a second, going like, yeah, okay, I know that, grandpa, and raise their hand. And then after all the dudes had their hand up in class, we're like 8th graders, the most savage of all fucking 8th grade boys, like the most savage people in the world. That teacher goes, did you know that because your mother's father is bald, you all have a 75% higher predisposition to being bald than your other classmates around you? And everyone's like, oh, you're going to be bald. Oh, cue ball, you dumb butt. And I was like, that's the most evil thing you could do to a kid is give them that thought in their head as a 12-year-old. Oh, shit, I'm going to be bald one day. And all your classmates around you start making fun of you and being like, ha, 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 baldy. And you're like, I have a full head of hair.
And you probably like start balding earlier because of the stress this has created.
Because you're worried for your whole life now. And actually, that story I kind of think is not a terrible metaphor for the grander picture of this whole sort of this ecosystem.
So are we all kicking in $60 so Max can get his DNA sequenced right now?
I mean, I'm interested.
And we'll have you back to read the results on the podcast.
Some traits you report. Oh man, that'd be crazy.
I'll throw $60 at that.
I will 100% throw $60 at that.
I gotta think about that one.
Figure out your diseases,
order that shit right now. We'll give you $60
gotta
each.
think about that one.
Venmo, fam, Venmo. We could do it in this room right now.
What information do you actually get?
The traits so they do the ancestry. They do how much of your ancestry is related to Neanderthals.
Oh.
That could fuck with some people.
That's the start of a roast fest right there.
And then, they tell you if
you old monkey,
your alcohol flush reaction, your the caffeine consumption you should have, like what you're more sensitive to.
Really?
And then I think what I understand is then you're supposed to fill out a trait report that says if you detect odor in your urine after eating asparagus, which Ryan can report to because he just ate some asparagus.
We both just ate asparagus and both peed. Mine definitely smelled weird. I can't vouch for yours, but
to be honest, I didn't think about it.
Huh. You ate asparagus like an hour after I did, though, so maybe it hasn't worked its way out.
Do you ever smell the asparagus in your piss?
I feel like societally I remember that being a thing, but I don't know that I've
probably not.
I've gone like, yeah, totally.
That's a pretty personal question, unless you're going around smelling other people's piss.
What do you mean?
You said societally. Just like, do you personally?
No. I'm saying I understand the societal asparagus makes your pee stink like conversation. I've heard that said before.
Right.
But I don't think I've ever.
It doesn't happen to you.
But I don't think it happens to me.
Okay. So that is genetic. Same with like if you think cilantro tastes like soap or if you think cilantro tastes good is genetic. So and the things
that's so easy.
So wait, they ask you to report those things because that gives them some more information or something?
I don't really understand completely. It says trait reports, 19 plus traits, and then it says asparagus odor detection, back hair, bald spot, bitter taste perception, cheek dimples, cleft chin, earlobe type, ear wax type, eye color,
earwax type,
finger length ratio, freckles, hair curliness, light or dark hair.
I'm sorry.
Hair loss. Photic sneeze reflex. Is that when you look at a light and you sneeze? Red
doesn't
hair.
Everybody have that? I thought that was animal, instinctual.
No.
What?
That doesn't work for me.
Doesn't work for me, dude. It's bullshit.
Whoa, it totally works for me. Are you kidding?
Good for you.
I mean, I can't just stare at a lamp long enough and I'll sneeze. But if I feel like I have the vibe to sneeze and I do stare at a bright light, it'll totally help.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
Whoa, I had no idea that was a genetic thing.
So what are the like health-based things, information that you would get?
Okay. Again, I don't.
Are you on 23andMe's website right now? Okay.
Yeah. So, and then it says carrier status reports. Does 23andMe advertise for this podcast?
They're about to. They might if we talk nice enough about
giving them enough free pub for one episode.
Goddamn. Well, they are like one of only a handful of cats that do it, right?
Okay, yeah, just to like level things out a little bit. So then it says carrier status reports, RSAX, Bloom syndrome, Canavan disease, cystic fibrosis.
I'm sorry, time out. This is why I know this would be bad for me, because you've already listed 3 diseases I didn't know I could have, and I might learn that I have them, and that's horrible.
It's not going to tell you that you have them. It's going to tell you your likelihood of getting them, which is even worse.
Okay, well, right, exactly.
Sickle cell anemia.
Okay.
These are just ones I've like vaguely heard of. I couldn't even tell you what the disease is. But yeah, there's 35 carrier status reports. Let me see if I can see a sample report.
Okay, so they tell you carrier status would mean that it's possible for you to develop that disease?
That genetically you have some sort of predisposition towards it, or it's in your DNA somewhere?
So the sample one gives you a positive one. It says, Jamie, you do not have the variants any of the variants we tested. So you're like, oh, cool. I can't wait to get that news.
Jamie's healthy as can be.
Yeah, of course their sample report is like, you're good, don't worry about it.
Live a healthy, long life.
Hey, Ty, you're dying next Tuesday. Sorry, bud. We'll give you a 50% refund.
Yeah. Oh, man, they should do that. If they find something gnarly in you, they're like, we got nothing for you.
Hey, Mr. Burns, you've got 17 kinds of cancer.
Here's your money back.
The example here says, you have a chance of being a carrier for cystic fibrosis. And then it says, you may still have a 1 in 210 chance of carrying a variant not covered by this test. Cystic fibrosis is most commonly found in people from Europe or Hispanic or Latino descent.
That's extra fucked if they tell you you don't have cystic fibrosis. But don't worry, sometimes we mess up and you might still have cystic fibrosis.
Yeah,
Ryan's like, I'm that one dude.
Of course
I'm the one in 20,000.
Of course I am. It's totally my personality. I know this is probably a different episode entirely, but I am fascinated that they can make sort of low-key blanket statements like that where it's just people of European descent or Hispanic and Latino descent are high, at a higher propensity to have cystic fibrosis. They just FYI.
Great segue though, because like what I was gonna say is like, I mean, we have lots of prejudice in this society already, like based off skin color.
Lots of made up cultural things.
Exactly. Yeah. But they, like what you just said, it is kind of fucked up to be like, man, if you're Hispanic, you're probably like have a better chance of getting cystic fibrosis. Like that is a blanket statement. But they like have the data behind it, you know?
And some of those things have been known for a while. Like sickle cell anemia is way more common in black people.
Right. I've heard that before too.
/ now maybe a lie was born. I think it may. I'm going to take that back because I don't know what I'm talking about.
But think about the real life.
Googly moogly.
Yeah.
Think about the real prejudice that could come if your DNA was made public, or if like an employer was like, great, we'd love to hire you. Here, spit in this thing. Oh shit, you have a 95% propensity for alcoholism. Like,
yeah, that would be kind of a trip.
Well,
yeah.
one of the things they say on the website is that they will not share your information with anyone, and that they follow the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act.
Whoa.
Shortened.
Whoa, that's a thing?
Shortened to GINA, which is a brilliant acronym.
Smart.
Yeah, the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act of 2008.
Wow, I can't believe we have that. I'm kind of glad we do,
Yeah,
even though I don't know what it
we're on
says.
top of it.
And it's been around for 9 years, apparently.
Right. Well, 5 years after they did the...
But it
the
covers like employer practices, labor organization practices.
Whoa.
So your ability to be hired and or join a union.
Is this international or national to the U.S.?
This is a U.S. document.
Whoa.
So it's through the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission.
But okay, and so
they're saying they cannot. It's to prohibit discrimination on the basis of genetic information with regard to health insurance and employment.
So you could still fire gay people in America because they're gay, but genetically, if there's something different about them. That's trash. God, we're so trash at so many things in this country.
let's not get into it.
But yeah, there is protection, at least with regards to employment and health insurance, based on
interesting
any genetic information that your employer may be privy to.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating.
But yeah, so like I was trying to do 23andMe, and so I do know some of the criticism behind it, because I was like, maybe I should research this a little bit before I just like spit in this bottle and send it off. And there's a lot of connection between Google and 23andMe, partly because I think Google owns part of the company, or Sergey's wife owns 23andMe or something like this.
Some overlap, some common interests.
And Google early on, they were like, we're just trying to like organize the world's information for you guys. Like we won't do anything with your information. And like, then fast forward like 15 years, like it's obvious that like the data is the value for Google.
Absolutely.
Not selling your information to anyone, but owning it themselves, and like your, propensities online, your online self, like what you...
Well, and I think it's getting to a point that we didn't necessarily envision it ever getting to, too. 15 years ago, we would not have thought that Google would have had access to our DNA or a full record of everything we've ever said into our phone. They can recreate your voice. They can know your genome. They could know every dollar you've spent for the last who knows how long. They where you live, where you are at all times based on your phone. Like that amount of data, I think, is so much larger than anyone would have predicted 5, 10, 15 years ago. And when you combine all of that, it gets really scary.
And they're not selling it, but they have all that data, and that's the value,
Yeah, I mean, also, how would any of us know what they're doing with that data most of the time?
And how many terms and conditions have you said yes to that
Right.
could say whatever?
Literally all of them. Everyone I've ever said yes to, I have not read more than a paragraph in. In 2007, Sergey Brin and Anne Wojcicki,
Cool.
she is the CEO of 23andMe and a co-founder. And in 2007, Sergey and Anne were married, and in that same year, Google invested $3.9 million in 23andMe, which is interesting because 2007 is, again, like kind of a long time ago for this type of stuff. They are now divorced as of summer of 2015.
This should be a reality show.
Who is Sergey Brin?
One of the Google co-founders.
Okay.
So the article that I just found in this, just trying to figure out what Google's investment in 23andMe was, turned up a Gizmodo article from January of 15 that's titled, "Of course 23andMe's plan has been to sell your genetic data all along."
Well,
Today,
yeah.
23andMe announced what Forbes reports is the first of 10 deals with biotech companies. Genentech will pay up to $60 million for access to 23andMe's data to study Parkinson's.
It just seems like that temptation would be way too much at some point for any company that's working on this stuff. When Google can throw unlimited money at any of this, how much did they invest into 23andMe?
$3.9 million in 2007.
3.9? Okay. But
10 years ago, I'm sure the company has 10x'd in value, so I'm sure that was
Google is throwing around billions like it's nothing on almost a daily basis.
Right.
Yeah. And we never know what they're doing with any of that information that they have about us. They're not obligated to tell you what they're doing the majority of the time.
Well, I think sometimes I don't know, there's a lot of complications that arise with search engines in general. Like all three of us here have relatively unique names, but what happens when the Tim Johnson in this state and the Tim Johnson in that state, what if their genetic data gets randomly, one of theirs is seen as the others? Like what if, I don't know, there's an interesting problem that arises when you give a company like Google, who catalogs and searches everything, the authority and the domain to make these sort of arbiter decisions of what belongs to who or who belongs to what, or what should be made available and findable, and what they tank into the bottom that is, on the 100, when have you ever been past more than 4 pages in Google? Like probably never in your entire lives. What things sink below that. And if you apply all of those things to something as personal as our genetic data.
No, yeah. I mean, like your DNA is fundamentally way more personal than your online behavior.
Totally. It's like, well, yeah.
And the only way it can get more personal is when you combine it with your online behavior.
Yes.
And your speech.
Yes.
And your fingerprints and everything else that companies have about us at this point. There's nothing, and your location. Google knows where I live, how my voice sounds, how I spend my money, what websites I go to, where I go throughout the day. When you then add that to everything genetic about me, like what else is there at that point?
It's funny too because it's super fucked up. Like the more we talk about it, I'm like, man, that's jacked up. But we're so far behind. It's like, you know what I mean? Like it's so like this was all taken care of like years ago. Now we're just starting to be like, wait a minute.
Wait, what were they going to do?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and to your point, Spencer, the thing that I also find really interesting is we always, the mental rebellion that I always have initially is they know these things about me. That's too intimate. It's too personal. But Google doesn't give a fuck about me. Google doesn't give a fuck about Ryan Copperud. Google gives a fuck about Ryan Copperud, Max Selim, Spencer Worth Davis, and then run the list. And when they can put all of that together, can you overlap a layer of people's medical history or propensities with other habits and things about them, and then have another layer to advertise against? Yeah, for sure. Especially when it comes to advertising against people's greatest fear, which is fucking dying. Like if your fear is I'm going to get cancer, and you have some level of information about people of this ethnicity and this race and heritage, and I mean what I just double said, but whatever, like, all the things that they could know about you through your genome.
Yeah, I mean the privacy aspect is one part of it, and I think we're if we're not already past it, we're rapidly sprinting past the point of no return on privacy.
Yeah.
I think what is more concerning to me is the level of manipulation you open yourself up to.
Yeah. Well, say more about that.
Well, when you're talking about advertising and how specific you can get, but I'm just thinking of, outside of advertising, what other ways could you start manipulating groups of people at that point?
A lot of them, and bad ones. And I can't speak to them specifically right now, but.
And I guess I don't have a specific example on the top of my head, but I think there is inherently some danger to, even if it's not Google may not care about me specifically as an individual, but if I fit into a fairly narrow category of theirs, or, this cross section of a bunch of different categories.
They know enough.
Yeah. there might not be much of a difference at that point.
Totally.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna take a sharp left, so
shoot.
I don't know. What were you gonna say, Max?
No,
I
what
feel
were you
like
gonna say?
Spencer's left is gonna be a lot sharper left
It's
than
all good.
than you think it might be.
Well, I just wanted to get into the topic of editing and removing and changing genes.
Yeah.
And what the future of that might look like.
So one of
we kind of jumped into that at the beginning and then decided to save it till later and never really came back around.
We did. Are we good to talk about editing at this
You guys can
juncture?
talk whatever you want. Let's get into the crazy shit.
Because
Okay.
I think that's where a lot of the potential benefits could be with all of this.
I would agree with you, and I think to me the editing is, to your point of what's valuable, is that editing is where, even though we're paying, maybe Max, if we can convince him to do it, paying $170 to get their genome, it's less for what you can really learn at this point and more where is that headed in terms of what can you do with that information once you have it. What can you add or subtract or, finagle, if you will.
I mean, I think this is where it gets really interesting too, because it's like, it gets sort of philosophical in this sense in many different ways, but like nature versus nurture in the sense that like I have a 1 in 200 chance of getting lung cancer.
Okay.
But if I smoke 2 packs of cigs a day, that number's like probably
It's going up
a lot. Yeah. And I might be, because of my environment or my habits, much less healthy than somebody who has a much higher predisposition to this.
Definitely.
And that's what a lot of critics of genomics will be like. I guess like a lot of critics would argue that genetics have less of an effect on diseases that you might acquire than environment does. Mm-hmm. And we're being pitched that genetics is the key to all of this and it's helping money get pumped into the process.
Sure.
Where like a critic will say like your environment and how you treat your body is way more important than like what your DNA is saying.
But that's hard work. We don't want to, that's not the easy answer, right? It's much more, it's much nicer to think about, I could just remove the gene that's going to give me cancer rather than I have to maintain my body myself by exercising and eating well and not doing stupid things.
And I also think to that point, not only are we looking for easy answers to subtract the negatives, but we as this population have always looked for easy answers to add the positives. And I think that the editing stuff gets real interesting when you start to talk about the possibilities of not just saying, can I get rid of my propensity to have Parkinson's? And you add in, can I
become a mutant?
Become a mutant? Can
I be Wolverine?
Am I an X-Men now?
Yes.
If I want to be? Or can I did want to talk about X-Men and I'm real glad that Spencer let me talk about X-Men. but I mean, but in all reality, if I want to in the womb make sure that my kid has 2015 vision,
Right,
and
the whole designer baby shit.
Yeah, I mean, and the designer baby shit was, they weren't really designing babies. They were removing a blood disease from children.
They're just printing fake
But
Louis V logos all over the space.
Oh my God. Oh man. Hey, if we got good enough at it, could we
Gross.
Louis print a baby?
Oh, absolutely. It's called tattoo, bro.
Yeah, it's true too. But that to me is is another very interesting element of this whole conversation, is not just what can we get rid of, but also if you can get rid of things, you can also add things. And can you add height and strength and eyesight and, brain power? I mean, we're talking about genuinely creating I don't want to overstate it, but superhumans. I mean, we're talking about the idea of creating,
X-Men. It's like enough smart people are confident in this that I will also be confident in it, that like a baby is going to be born in a test tube, not born in a test tube, but made in conceived in a test tube for sure in our lifetime.
Yeah.
You know, and like as far as like designer babies, like you can still just take the best of you and the best of your partner, but you can make a better kid.
But yeah, that still opens up a lot of possibilities that don't exist right now.
Mm-hmm. And
kind of godlike, you know?
It's sort of like the Nephilim who came down and genetically altered the Atlanteans to create human beings. Yeah.
Here we go.
I'm fucking around with the alien stuff a little bit because I feel obligated to mention aliens on every podcast. But I do think it's interesting that almost every ancient culture has some myth about humans interbreeding with either animals or some sort of god or angel or higher being. That myth, that story is present in thousands of ancient texts.
Sure.
And I can't imagine that it's a new idea with humans to want to improve ourselves or to get rid of negative traits or to live longer or to be healthier or all these things. And like, I don't know. I wonder if this is the first time that has happened, or if maybe there have been other moments in our history where something along these lines has happened.
I mean, not to drop a Hitler bomb, but like Hitler would have been one of the more, I would say.
Yeah, the whole topic of eugenics is definitely related here somewhere.
To this. Yeah, I mean, you know,
and I think that's one of the huge potential negatives that you open yourself up to when you start going down this path.
Totally. Because I think too, you know, to get kind of back into some of Max's philosophical stuff is, what do we see as good?
Right.
You know,
it's extremely subjective.
It's extremely subjective. You know, there are some people, while I know this is maybe too far devil's advocate, there are some people that would say that, you know, chance and suffering and randomness and chaos in our universe are important aspects of learning and being and creation and causing us to create and react to things. And some of these elements of stripping out some of this stuff, while seemingly, I think, attractive, could also put us in a position where we lose some of those other sort of anti-elements of what it is to be a human being.
I think when you start eliminating suffering, you absolutely start changing what it is to be human. I can't say if that would be positive or negative, but it would definitely be a change.
You guys should watch Gattaca again for sure. Because there will be this moment when there's like haves and have-nots, and that will also be fucked up too. You know, right, where his older brother is a test tube baby, and he's like a natural birth, and it's like, yeah.
Well, and early on,
right, and his big brother is
the best,
smarter and stronger and taller, and
I think it's with any new technology, it's going to be really expensive, and it's going to be limited to people who can afford to do it, at least at the onset. And that's going to create an even bigger class division if it's not only do you have money and access to certain things, but now you're in some ways objectively a better human being than everyone else. Almost, you know, you start separating like a different species almost eventually. That creates, it's more than a class issue at that point.
You're right. I mean, it is. It's literally a second species at that point.
Breakaway civilization, to use a phrase of all the guys who write books and talk on ancient aliens.
And also too, though, that breakaway civilization is already sort of in effect. Did you see? There was an article that came out recently in, I think it was The Atlantic, about the Silicon Valley millionaires and billionaires, bunch of dudes who made a bunch of money off of buying, selling, starting, creating, working at big important tech companies in Silicon Valley, who are also huge doomsday preppers and have bought plots of land and years storage of food and like created these total breakaway locations and learned how to fly helicopters and shit, so that if anything goes into ruin or there's a mass solar flare or something fucking crazy happens, they can just fuck off and be like, cool, we'll repopulate, no problem, I'm going to be fine. And there's an element of that is there's financial preparation that sort of sets you off into the future that is completely similar to financial preparation that could set you off into the future, just related to your genetic ability to pay for and affect that. And also, if you have a bunch of money, and a lot of what this is when your kid's in the womb, can you make sure that your kid doesn't have these things?
Right.
You can ensure generation after generation in a way that so many people will have no ability to ensure generation after generation.
Old money and also old health.
Yeah.
Right. You'll live forever.
Old money and new health.
Yeah.
Yo.
The mixtape.
I just
coming
melted
soon.
into my seat. It's terrible.
Ryan, did you ever see Elysium? It's only somewhat relevant, but I just wanted to ask you if you'd seen a movie. I'm pretty sure you haven't, because I haven't done that yet this podcast.
Nah.
Cool.
Have you seen Event Horizon, bro?
Nah.
Bro, you ever see Waterworld?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Can I throw a quote at you guys?
Please do.
So Freeman Dyson, who's a theoretical physicist.
Is the Dyson sphere named after him?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't have any information besides this quote. But Freeman Dyson writes, in the future, a new generation of artists will be writing genomes the way Blake and Byron wrote verses.
Whoa.
Dope.
I feel like I just had this thought as you were saying that we see these things kind of happen in pattern over and over again in our society, where things are too big, too expensive, too unapproachable, almost unthinkable. And then slowly they start to happen a little bit. Oh, we might do this thing. Oh shit, we did this thing. Oh, now we did that thing a second time. Now it's happening more frequently. Now it's happening so frequently that it's in the hands of multiple people. Now
it's $180 on the internet.
It's $180 on the internet, and we don't even think about, really genuinely, I don't think we think about societally everything that it took to make our way down that painful, expensive, fucked up funnel.
Get from a 13-year, $3 billion project to a 2-week, $200 project.
I mean, it's insane, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like there are instances, you could talk about just computers in general. The first computer was the size of a building, and then now we all have one that's on airplane mode in our pockets that's more powerful than any calculator they ever had that was the size of a building.
Is my phone supposed to be on airplane mode right now?
It doesn't have to
My
be.
bad, dude.
If it rings, we will not yell at you. And I guess all I'm trying to say is the more that we sort of democratize these technologies, I feel like also the more frequently we see people doing things with them that are uncouth, because they're in everyone's hands. So once everyone has it, there will inevitably be bad eggs in that group of everyone who will use them for ill, in the same way that there are hackers that are trying to take down power plants in countries and shit like that. If we have the ability to refine our human beings into exactly what we want them to be, there are people who will use that ability to make destructive human beings or bad things that are intentionally not necessarily stronger and smarter and healthier.
Smarter psychopaths.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Or any kind of anything that, if it becomes so democratized that anyone can do it at will, you can create a character or.
Yeah. I mean, I've never thought about it that way. It's sort of a bummer compared
And then
to
you
what
start
we're talking
cloning
about.
them, and then you make your own army.
And then, are we Star Wars? Did we live in Star Wars now?
Yes.
And then they make a simulation, and then we're in a simulation.
And you're right, bro. I shouldn't have gone right to that element with it, because there is a total beauty in that too, that you could create something really beautiful. But I just think there's always another side to that coin.
I think at its core, what makes this topic so interesting is that the stakes are so high, and there are so many variables and so much uncertainty.
Totally.
Like, the best case scenario for this is that we literally create a utopia. And the worst case scenario is that everyone dies. Those are the stakes.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah.
And
man, what is crazy about that is that, I'm not saying we'll experience the utopia or we'll experience the apocalypse, but it's fucking happening right now.
could be
this
well
is
on
not
our way to one of
theoretical
those.
in
Right.
a lot of ways. And it should be a fascinating ride one way or another.
For real. I hope that we can knock enough genes that are bad out of the three of us in this room, so that we just live long enough to see which one it ends up being. Even if it goes sour, I want to be there to see it go sour.
I got too many bad genes, dude.
I know, right?
Well, Max, I'm going to give you $60, and I think you should get going on the 23andMe.
This can
and
be
we should
edited
have you back
out
in a couple weeks.
Oh, man, that would be interesting.
Wrestle with it. Hey, wrestle with it all you want. You don't have to commit to it, but
and if you don't want to, I will.
Will you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would for sure do that. I would absolutely do it. Yeah.
You
pitching some money.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm just curious what this looks like. Yeah. It would be like kind of intense if like
I was just gonna say this could
we're
be
like, oh yeah, roll, this is gonna be fun. Like this is gonna be sweet.
That's good radio if I've ever heard it. We find out live on the podcast and we only have 12 more episodes left because I'm gonna die.
Okay. Here's what we're doing. We're bringing in a bottle of liquor, and depending on
that's gonna just kill me faster.
Well,
Spencer's like says here I'm getting hit by a car in 2 weeks.
It says here I have a strong allergy to whiskey, and if I drink some, I'm gonna die.
Well, all right, then we'll just get a different bottle of booze, and we'll still drown your potentially life-threatening diseases with alcohol.
Yeah,
of some
you guys
kind.
throw me some money, I'll do it. We can
right.
We can read the results on a future episode.
We'll do a follow-up. Shit, oh man,
That'll be tight.
I'm already anxious about knowing your diseases. I'm already anxious about knowing what might happen to you, bro.
And then it'll be like the first not what if podcast. So it'll be like Google has my DNA.
I've actually really wanted to do this.
Talk.
I've actually really wanted to do this because I don't know the like I can't think of the word where your family is from geographically.
Your ancestry?
I guess, yeah.
I think that was the word we were struggling for and then landed on earlier anyway. Ancestry, I think.
Half of my family, because my dad was adopted.
Oh, sure.
And so I've always wanted to know that stuff too. Like I know where 2 of my 4 grandparents are from and not the other half. So that'd be fun to figure out too.
Maybe we'll start with the medical stuff and then we'll end with like, hey, but you're Croatian. Cool.
But you're 50% Croatian.
Maybe you won't be so hard on the Chinese anymore once you find out how much.
I'm 75% Chinese.
No. GATTACA, man. GATTACA.
All right.
Yo,
we're out of here.
Max, good to see you, man. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me.
We'll do a follow-up. We'll have you back. We'll do it again.
Tight.
This has been the What If Podcast, and we love you. Bye.
Peace out.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to the What If Podcast. We'll be back next week with another episode.